I'm not really sure. I think that white will probably prefer something like more solid than taking on c5. But if you really want to frustrate players, play the London system. I know that you guys have checked out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training. And Magnus Carlsen played the London system, okay, against Tomaszewski. But don't get the idea that he's like a London system aficionado. I mean, it's a playable system. Every strong master understands basically how to play the London system. What was surprising was that Tomaszewski didn't seem to have much of a clue with black. I mean, it's kind of one of those openings that I guess a top player maybe neglects because he's more concerned about theoretical lines. So that's basically what's happening. She's fixing her hair. Yeah, that reminds me of one of my favorite poker handles of all time. There was a Portuguese tournament regular who I love. I mean, I don't mean to diss the ladies out there. It just is funny when, you know, sometimes men and women make fun of each other. But there was this guy. He was a really good player from Portugal, and his poker handle was bags and shoes. I thought that's a funny word, you know. All of his money goes to bags and shoes. Rook on a to c8. Welcome to the stream. She's fixing her hair. Rook on a to c8. Yeah, I could go with the other rook to c8. Maybe better. Rook on f to c8. White's got some weaknesses. Look what I've achieved though here. I have some white square weaknesses in white's position, like the d3, e2 diagonal. And, you know, it doesn't seem much to the uninitiated, but it really does make a big difference. Black's position is much easier to play once those white square bishops have been traded. It's kind of a subtle thing. And it's certainly nothing earth-shaking, and white's position is still fine. But black is just more comfortable having traded that one set of pieces. So rook on f to e1. Good. Yeah, so I was talking about the London system, played by Carlsen. I don't know that Carlsen really knew what he was doing either. Some people were making wild speculations that Magnus like prepared, like there's a new move on move 10 with like rook on f to e1 or I mean, there's no way. It was like no way he could predict that Tomaszewski would play a pretty strange kind of setup with black, and so Magnus was just winging it basically, and he got interesting chances and played quite dynamically. Although I think Tomaszewski had a forced draw, like at one point when Magnus offered a sacrifice of a pawn. It was probably a forced draw. So then it was followed by Karyakin playing the London system against Michael Adams, which has got to be one of the craziest things I saw. This was in the Tata tournament in the Netherlands, which is the last super tournament. So, London system. What am I doing here? B5 is really tempting. I mean, maybe it's good. B5, I was a little worried about A4, to be honest. And maybe I'm right to be worried about A4. So, and I don't really like taking on D4 because it gives him some play on the file. I could play knight B6 maybe. Knight B6. Yeah, I think this is okay here. It seems, it looks a little visually odd to play knight to B6. But I have the D5 square for my knights. And I can capture on C5 with a rook, which is the main idea. No, D takes C, rook takes C5 is good for black. There are a lot of queen pawn openings without C4 in the World Rapid Championship. I think Kramnik won a classic game against Paschall with it. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Kramnik is pretty strong strategically, so I would think he would do well in a kind of closed queen pawn game. You know, playing the Catalan isn't exactly that much different. It's pretty positional and strategic. A4, there are some sharp lines in the Catalan, admittedly, some very sharp lines. They're kind of the minority. A4, I think this was what I was a little worried about. Okay, good move, Liberian. And I could close it up with c4. I think that's incorrect strategically for me. No, I'm ready to play knight to d5, knight on b to d5. If I have to, move that guy. But I feel like white has got a little something here somehow. I don't have a clear plan. Alright, this is the plan, I guess. Knight d5, guarding e7, hitting the bishop on f4. The knight is a bit unstable, admittedly. Although, we have some interesting ideas. We can play... I mean, we is like me. I can play bishop h6. Just maybe just take on d4 here. I'm not that worried about ed. He has a little bit of play along the e file, but I think that the e7 weakness can be managed pretty well. So one idea is bishop h6, and that's something I've seen some strong players do. Unfortunately, right here it doesn't work because he has c4. I mean, I don't know that it would win material necessarily for white, but... Alright, is c4 a threat overall? Kind of hard to say. I mean, it looks a little weakening for white, but it might be. I can play e6, would drastically weaken the d6 pawn. I can play rook c7, putting the rook on the diagonal of the bishop on h2, or rook e8. Espresso Forever, you sent me an email that you're thinking about, you know, like learning from the stream. And that's awesome. You guys, he said he was learning from the stream and he was considering more candidate moves, and that's great. You know, I mean, if I can inspire you guys to make a change, you know, in the way you're approaching the game, hopefully for the positive, then that's terrific. You can't go wrong. I mean, unless you're getting in time pressure on a regular basis, then calculating more candidate moves is a step in the right direction. So now knight e4. All right, I think that's okay for me. I kind of like that simplification here. He can take on d5, but it doesn't do anything. So I like my structure overall here. I think thinking structure is important. All the time, basically. All the time. I mean, it doesn't have to be your number one consideration, but you should keep pawn structure in your mind at all times. And it's something that a lot of people don't do. So now all I need to do is make sure my knight is protected and I'm in good shape. I think we've got the e-pawn protected. We've got a structure where, you know, we could probably get an advantage slowly with the use of a minority attack type of idea. So now time is an issue. I guess we'll play e6. It's a little weakening, but it's probably okay. I think now we can manage a little bit of the weakness of d6. Not so easy for white to get there. But the position is equal. Liberian plays a really good London system. He looks like... Alright, I've got to be careful here not to hang anything. Rook c6 is interesting, but my rook does get a little up front there. Maybe I should plan on playing d5 at some point. I hate to move my knight. I hate to move my knight from d5, I really do. But I just have to make a decision here. We're going to lose on time if we don't act fast. And Yeah, knight d5 definitely on the passive side. Maybe h6 is a useful prophylactic move. Liberian, I think you missed rook takes e6 there, my friend. It looked like a very interesting sacrifice. Now we're probably okay. Try not to hang my rook on e8 at this point. Fortunately, if bishop takes d6, I have queen takes b5, followed by rook takes d6. Guys, what's the opinion on rook takes d6? You think Liberian had it, right? I mean, it looked really strong. You sack a rook for 2 pawns, but you had this murderous threat of knight g5 check. Maybe it didn't work. I don't know. Maybe I can play h6 at the end and just hide my king or something. I have to believe you had something there. It's probably winning for white. I felt it. Like my pieces would be discombobulated and difficult to coordinate. Bishop knight on e7, rook on e8. But I think Liberian is focusing very, very well on positional aspects, and he probably needs to work on just a little more calculation, you know, when he needs to kind of capitalize on his strategic advantage. Rook c6, queen g5. I don't know about queen g5. Looks a little weird. Off base. H6 anyway. I was just talking about this move. I think that anyway h6 is a useful move for me. Yes, it's a little bit weakening my structure, but this is 10-0 classical, so we're going to have to go fast now. Alright, we have the plan. We have a somewhat solid position. I need to play very quick and very alertly. But I like Liberian's game. The way he played this was excellent. So now it's just a matter of the clock. Not letting him sack a rook on e6 again. He doesn't want to hang his a4 pawn. That's what that is about, I guess. And I need a little bit of time to reposition my pieces. Maybe I can sack a rook on c3 there. "32 seconds to 3 minutes. Man. This is pretty unpleasant. Okay. Alright, I have very big problem on the clock. I think I'm okay here, honestly. Not by much, but not by much. Calidus in the first game of Queen C2, Slav 2. Okay. Looked at the moves after, I wasn't familiar with it. Oh. Yep. I want to get rid of the knight on e4. It's just murdering me. And he has a slight edge now. Man. We're going to lose this one on the clock for sure. It's okay. I think you had d5 with advantage. Slight edge. You should play the move there, d5. Now black's probably winning. There's no way I have enough time to convert. But if you play d5, I wouldn't have anything. And just trading pieces is usually the best thing to do when you're up material. Okay. Okay, GG Liberian. You're gonna win on